Welcome to another episode of the Biker PM. I'm your host, Anthony Pavelich. Today we have part 2 of Ben Aston, a fellow project manager, so make sure you've already listened to part 1. Let's get started. So tell me a little bit more about, you've got your members area, you've got your training, which sounds great for digital project managers. How did you start your podcast? What is your goal of your podcast? Because you have a very robust site with a lot of tools and a lot of information.
Yeah, so I think we started the podcast, I think we're on like episode 160 something now, which is great. And I think what I wanted to do was unpick some of the theory a bit. And I think sometimes when we write content, like myself included, we can end up being quite theoretical. We're trying to simplify things. I think in the podcast, and it's called the Digital Project Manager Podcast, what we try and do is unpick things a little bit more. We pull apart the theory and we talk about how things work and how things don't work. And if they don't work, where they go wrong and how we can stop them going wrong. So it's a bit more of a deconstructing of the theory. And I think that was the kind of intent of the podcast, was how can we dive deeper into some of these topics, unpick them in such a way that people can actually apply the theory and the concepts a bit more constructively. So yeah, we started the podcast, I think it's a couple of years ago now, I'm not really sure. And yeah, release a podcast every couple of weeks. And normally it's around a particular topic that we've all also written about.
That's great. I think, I did the same thing with my podcast. So I didn't have a definite, what is the reason behind it, other than I wanted entrepreneurs to have somewhere they could hear about project management and what worked for that, what worked for other entrepreneurs and what did not work for them. So they can kind of avoid the struggles of like, oh my God, what can I use and what can I do? Eventually organically evolved into talking to entrepreneurs, not only about what they've done, what tools they've used for project management, but also their struggles in their entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great.
So that's going to lead me actually to my next question is, what made you decide? So are you still working as a digital project manager, or is a digital project manager your full-time job now?
Yeah, the digital project manager is my full-time job. Yeah.
So what made you at some point decide that you wanted to do your own thing and leave the comfort of being paid by somebody?
Yeah, so I'd created the digital project manager on the side. I never really intended it to be a revenue generating business. But yeah, at the time that I created the online course, the Mastering Digital Project Management course, that took a lot of energy and time. And so I actually took a 3-month sabbatical from my day job to do that. They were kind enough to let me go. And so, yeah, I created the course. And then a year later, after running 5 courses, I thought, hey, well, actually, I'm making enough money to make leaving my job a viable prospect. And so I thought, I'll leave my job, I'll work a bit on the digital project manager, and I'll do some consulting on the side as well. And actually, it was a great decision to leave the company and start my entrepreneurial journey with this limited risk, like contracting and beginning my entrepreneurial journey. But actually, it was a really bad decision in that I had a really split focus. And as much as I wanted to be building the digital project manager, I just kept on being sucked back into the consulting world. And so, yes, it was a great safety net, but it really slowed things down at the beginning for me.
It's actually a very good entrepreneurial lesson to expand on, because splitting your focus, having good direction, and you wanted to build on the digital project manager. There are so many entrepreneurs that want to build their business, but it can be a number of things that prevent it. Fear, self-doubt, the uncertainty that people are actually going to want your product. What was the turning point, or what was it that stopped you from doing it full time and still doing the consulting gig? And then at what point did you say, okay, the consulting's got to go?
Yeah, I think, for me, it was the fear that I wouldn't make enough money to make ends meet. And so I thought, well, the great thing with the consulting is that I just get paid for every hour I work. And yeah, eventually, though, it wasn't long that I was doing consulting. It was only 6 months or so, but it was long enough that when I kind of looked back and reviewed what I'd achieved over those 6 months or so on the digital project manager, it was just business as usual. I hadn't started any new projects entrepreneurially on the digital project manager. And I thought, hey, this isn't actually why I left my job. I didn't leave my job to do contracting. I left my job to start business. And so I was able to say, okay, I'm just going to focus on the digital project manager now and stop contracting. It was only actually a fixed term contract. So it came to an end. And just at that point, I decided I was going to stop splitting my focus and just focus on the digital project manager.
And the skills you have as a project manager helps run the digital project manager and ensuring that you're getting your projects and you're getting everything done you want to get done. So what tools do you use for your projects? And
Yes.
you've got a lot of reviews on your website of different
Yeah.
Gantt chart software, but what tools do you use?
Yeah, so I mainly, for our own projects, we're using Trello internally, and that's how we manage. We manage different things. So one of the projects that we manage, I mean, it's more of a business as usual, but we use Trello for our publishing workflows as we get at the idea for a piece of content, create the content, publish the content, promote the content. And there's different people that are involved creating graphics, videos, different things. And so that's more of a kind of Kanban process. It's a repeating process that we're continuing. But then we have more projects, which are things like launching the DPM school, our online mastering digital project management course. That's a project. It has a start and an end. We're trying to launch something. Another project we did recently was a project to create the membership. That was about a year ago now. And so we plan it out quite loosely, in as much as we're trying to just define what the MVP is. And then we put those features into Trello in a backlog. And we then work those through and we move the cards across our Kanban board in Trello to identify the things that we're working on and the things that are done. To try and get to that minimum viable product. And so that's really how we manage the projects. Yeah, we don't actually use Gantt charts, although I love Gantt charts. And
I do too. It's a geek thing about it. It's like you love to see I really, honestly, I use Trello too, but I have to say that it took me a while to get into the agile mindset, the wanting to use agile, because like I love Gantt charts. I love the scheduling. It's a geek thing to say maybe, and to see it all laid out of how the steps are going to interact is there's something satisfying about it that most people won't understand.
Yeah, well, I think what I love about Gantt charts is being able to see a route from A to B.
Yes.
And you know that it's not going to go to plan, but it helps you think through what the dependencies are between different tasks. It helps you think about the critical path and the tasks that are pushing out the timeline. So I think it
and
can just
resources that you have assigned and resource utilization and all this stuff that people don't think about, and it's that you don't get with Trello. But
you don't. Yeah, the challenge. The reason I don't use Gantt charts is the reality is that because our priorities are always business as usual, not the projects. We kind of just have to get to them when we get to them. And I think one of the things that we find now running the digital project manager is our quarterly planning is really important. And then we have monthly planning, and each quarter or month, we're reviewing what we've done in the month previously. We're planning for the month ahead. And we're looking really, really carefully at those metrics, like our key performance indicators, which tell us like our leading indicators and our trailing indicators of are things heading in the right direction. And that then helps us create the backlog for the month ahead. So we try to be quite data driven in terms of what we prioritize and what projects or what part of business as usual is most important.
Do you feel overwhelmed, overstimulated, and overworked? There's so much you need to do, but you don't know what the best way to do it is? And you're not sure where all your time goes each week? Jump on over to my website, pavproconsulting.com. You can download my free PDF, The 5 Proven Strategies to Steal Back Lost Time and Money in Your Business. And while you're there, you can book a free process discovery session. pavproconsulting.com. Move forward with confidence, focus, and productivity. So many, just out of curiosity, how many Trello boards do you have?
Oh, I don't know.
A lot?
Probably, well, for each website, we have a publishing Trello board, and then we have a projects Trello board. Then everyone, or some of the team have their own Trello boards because we're syncing cards between different boards. So I don't know exactly, but the main there's a main business as usual publishing, and there's kind of a projects board. So there's two main Trello boards.
Yeah, I use Trello. I have separate boards for separate things, but I also have a client that I have a Trello board for so that she can throw things on, I can throw things on under ideas, but it helps move things.
Yeah.
It really does. So where do you see taking the digital project manager? What do you think, what is your next big goal for it?
Well, one of the things we're actually in the middle of doing or about to do is transition. And this is a kind of project we're working on at the moment, is transitioning our community from Slack to a new forum. And I think we've realized that we have a community of nearly 4,000 people on Slack. And Slack serves its purpose as a real-time-ish communication tool. But what we're wanting to do is move people over to a forum where the conversation doesn't just disappear into kind of the thread, and what we're trying to develop is more of a knowledge base. And I think our big vision for the digital project manager is to create an ever evolving playbook for digital project management. In the same way the PMBOK is the project management book of knowledge, we don't want to publish anything, but we want to create an ever evolving playbook. And I see that playbook evolving in the forum that we are creating. And we have different topics and different threads and resources, and to create this really rich knowledge base that isn't purely theoretical, which is my issue with PMI's PMBOK, but it's actually rooted in real world examples. Like, hey, this is the template or the process I used to work with a third party on this website redevelopment project. Like really, really specific. And I think that specificity is incredibly powerful when people can say, oh, well, that's exactly what I'm doing. That's helpful. Or they can say, well, I know it's different, but here's how I could adjust it based on my scenario. So the vision is this playbook that becomes drawn out, this collective wisdom of the community.
But I think that also gives the opportunity to take that template and ask advice on, like you said, this is different. How would you suggest I take your template and modify it for what I'm doing?
Yeah, definitely.
I think it gives a good collaboration tool.
Yeah.
So let me ask you just a couple of quick questions. First of all, if you had to give a piece of advice to a new project manager that was jumping into the world, what do you think that piece of advice would be?
Yeah, I think the advice I'd give is make sure you initiate and plan the project properly. I think as a project manager, you need a vision of how you're going to get from A to B. We talked about this right at the beginning. It's like the difference between it being an individual sport and a team sport. I see the project manager's role as a visionary, as a leader, as someone who can see the path from A to B and help the team get there. And I think as junior project managers or people new to project management, they can often think, well, we're in this together. I'm in a team, but it needs someone to step up and take leadership and take ownership and responsibility of delivering value at the end of the project. And everyone will be looking to you as the project manager to do that, whether you like it or not. Yeah. So I think that the initiation and the planning process, having a vision and idea yourself of how you get from A to B is super, super important. And whether or not you're planning that out on a Gantt chart, as we've been talking about, or even just on a whiteboard, sketching it out. What's important is that you have an idea of how you're going to get there and the steps and the process that you're going to follow. And I think if you have that vision, your ability to lead people into that and explain and get buy-in from the team and stakeholders is going to be much, much easier for you.
Yeah, it's like, congratulations, here's your project management role. All eyes are now on you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's your fault.
It is. It's your fault and it's your responsibility. So the next, if you had to give one resource for somebody that was beginning their journey either as an entrepreneur like you leaving your company, or even since we're both project managers, if you had somebody that was like, I want to become a project manager, what is one resource you would suggest for them to look at besides
my own
the digital PM?
Yeah. Well, let me talk about entrepreneurial. And I think what I found, some resources that I personally have found super helpful, is when I've found a community of like-minded entrepreneurs to inspire me, to provoke, to ask difficult questions. And a couple of communities, online communities that I'm part of. One of them is called the Dynamite Circle. They have a podcast called the Tropical MBA podcast, TMBA podcast. So check that out. Also, another entrepreneurial community is called Rhodium Weekend Facebook group. But I found as an entrepreneur, those are the communities where I found people having the kind of conversations that I need to be having, asking questions about things that I need to be thinking about. And I think as an entrepreneur, sometimes it can be, especially as a solo entrepreneur, we can get kind of dragged down into just doing and not really thinking about the business and building the business and moving the business forward. We get kind of sucked into just delivering or making sure our team delivers. But I think it's so important that we kind of look ahead a bit and try and work out, okay, well, how are we going to get the business where we want it to go? So being part of communities and masterminds full of people that are going to push you and hold you accountable, I think is super important. But yeah, in terms of a project manager at the beginning of their project management journey, the other, I guess, kind of community in the space that I'm in, I think is great, is called the Bureau of Digital. And they run events. So there's definitely worth checking out. Check out the Bureau of Digital.
Great. Thank you. Then if people want to find out more about you and the Digital PM, what is the best way, besides the Digital PM website, which I will definitely include in the show notes, but what is the best way to find out more information about you?
Yeah, well, you can head to benaston.com. That's my personal website. We've got some of my personal projects listed there. So yeah, as well as the Digital Project Manager, what we're actually creating is a series of websites around different digital disciplines. So we have launched something called the Product Manager, Customer Experience Lead, the Ecom Manager, the QA Lead, People Managing People. These are all different websites with a similar kind of ethos, which is all about helping people succeed and helping create communities where people can help one another. And our most recent project, which we're just working on, is called Indie Media Club. And that's all about helping people in the independent media world create and publish great content and build healthy, thriving communities.
A lot of work that you have going on, a lot of different, pokers in the fire. So thank you for joining me today. I appreciate it. We will definitely include a lot of this information in the show notes, and I look forward to seeing what else you put out there.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Biker PM. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment. I'd love to hear what you think. And remember, if you're an entrepreneur that wants to be with like-minded individuals and improving their project management skills, join the Biker PM Facebook group. Until next time.